So this section is on the Q&As from the questions from the people who were in the first course, the first Build Your Book course. So the first question is, which do you create first, the ebook or the Kindle book? You create your Kindle book first because it's the book with the least formatting in it. The reason I say that is because if you go ahead and format your book, you know, with paragraph indentations and bolds and italics and spaces and stuff like that, it's all going to be thrown away when you create your manuscript for the Kindle book, because they don't want you to format it. They format it for you. The only thing that you're going to be formatting is the chapter heading, and the way to make it live, you can find out about that in kdp.amazon.com in their help section. Okay, so you create your Kindle book first, and then when you're done with that, you put it aside and you copy and paste that information into your template for your print book, because that's the book that's going to have the most formatting. After you've completed that, you take the blank pages out of it, and there's your ebook. And then you want to make sure that all of your links that you've added are live in the ebook. Okay, so you'll create your Kindle book, then your print book, and then your ebook. The next question is, OpenOffice is free? Yes, it is. It's a fantastic program. I love it. I use it for all kinds of things. You can get it online. Just Google it and download it for whatever type of configuration you have, whether it's a PC or a Mac or Linux or whatever. The thing that's cool about OpenOffice is that it functions just like Microsoft Word, but it doesn't have the hidden code that we talked about earlier. And you can use it for creating a spreadsheet, a presentation, you know, PowerPoint, and other functions as well. If you're creating a coloring book or a kid's book, an art book, or a photography book, it's really easy to do if you open it in presentation mode and you choose your book size and you put in your pictures and your text just as if you were creating a PowerPoint, but then you export it as a PDF, and that's what you upload to Amazon. It's so easy, it's almost stupid. I mean, almost anybody could make a book using OpenOffice. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it, especially if you're a Word, you know, if you've been using Word for years and you're real familiar with it, you're not familiar with other programs, use OpenOffice. The next question, do you make a .doc file or a .pdf to upload to Amazon? You want to create a .pdf file. It does say on Amazon that it will take a doc file, but every time I've tried to upload one, it gets corrupted or weirded out in somehow. I don't recommend it. Oh, there's one more typo. Goody. Sorry about that. A.doc. Okay. What you want to do is you want to export it as a PDF if you're in OpenOffice. If you are in Word, you're going to go to Print and then Save as PDF. If you are in InDesign, you will export as either a small document or a large document. You want to pick the large document because you want it to be as detailed as possible. A small one is like a PDF. I mean, an ebook. But your large print file is going to be the one that you want to upload to Amazon. Okay. Like I said, OpenOffice functions just like Word, but it doesn't have the hidden code behind it. So if you're familiar with Word, OpenOffice will be really easy for you to use. And we've talked about why save a Microsoft Word document as a plain text file so that you can avoid the code. If you absolutely must use Microsoft Word, then do save your documents as plain text. And then when you want to make your PDF, instead of saving it, you will go to print, save as PDF. Okay. And we've talked about why make a print book before an ebook. I'll go over that a little bit in more depth. When you create a print book, you've got blank pages in the front and the back, and sometimes in the content, you know, like the back of a chapter that will face the beginning of a right-hand side beginning chapter. When you create your ebook, you want to remove all those blank pages. And it's a whole lot easier to remove the blank pages than to insert them. Because when you create your print book, every time you insert a page, it changes all the way down the whole document. You know, like in a Microsoft Word document, let's say that it's 10 pages long. If you add one more word that makes a paragraph one more line long, it shunts down the entire document, and it might even add another page. So you want to be really careful about what you're doing. Deleting a blank page is a whole lot easier than adding a page. Okay, so you make your print book before your ebook. Now, somebody said in the class that I just taught, the Build Your Book course, we were talking about creating a title for her book. And she said she wanted to come up with something clever and fun. That might be a good idea if there's only a few books in your category. But if there are a lot of books in your category that you're going to have to compete with, you want to narrow down your title's focus so completely that the object or the intent of your book is so obvious when people look at it that they'll go, oh, that's exactly what I'm looking for. But if you try to be clever or fun and it doesn't hit the mark with your reader, you're going to sell a whole lot less books. I guarantee it, because people aren't looking for clever and fun. The place to put clever and fun is in your subtitle and inside the book itself. You know, you can be clever and fun all you want inside the book. But when you're trying to sell your book and having it out there on, you know, let's say you're at a bazaar and you've got a table where you're selling stuff, you know, and there's your book with its title that's clever and fun. Some people might not get your sense of humor. They might not get the cleverosity that you are trying to convey, and they'll walk right by your book. So you want to be very focused as to what your title is. You know, you don't have to be super serious or, you know, deadly, horrible, boring, but you've got to come up with something that's focused on what people will get out of your book. It's just simple. You know, if you want to sell it, you got to attract people. Now, here's a way to do that. I worked with somebody a long time ago who was a coach who helped people complain. And, and she reasoned it this way. She said, listen, you know, we are so taught to be nice, to be positive and happy all the time. People are not nice. People are not happy all the time. They bitch and moan about this and that, and they complain. What if I use complaining as my mode of being able to help them to be happier and more positive? And so her title was Bitch and Moan More. It was fabulous. I loved it because, you know, people are going to pick it up and go, really? I should bitch and moan more? This is interesting. What's this about? And her subtitle was How to Use Bitching and Moaning to Get Clear of Negative Emotions and Live a More Positive Life. So if you use what the problem your people are facing in your title, is going to attract more people. Now, some people say, well, shouldn't I use the positive thing? You know, live a more fulfilled life, something like that. Well, we're wired weird, human beings are. We are more attractive to what bothers us than we are to what does not bother us. And so we watch things that have violence and nasty sex and people beating people up and stuff like that. It stirs us, and it puts us in touch with a whole lot more stuff than a La La Nice Guy movie does. You know, don't get me wrong, feel good movies are wonderful. I love them, but if you'll notice, there's always a problem in that movie that somebody has to overcome. There's always a problem or a villain or something bad happens to somebody that it takes some kind of an effort on the protagonist's part to overcome and create another outcome. So when you use bitching and moaning on your cover, you're going to connect with where they are right now rather than where they want to be, because they're not there because they don't believe they can get there yet. It's your job to show them how to get there. So what you'd want to do is say, don't know how to change a tire? Here's how, blah, 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 your subtitle. Rather than drive safely with your new tire. You know, obviously I'm not great at making up titles on the run here, but you get the idea where you take the problem and you talk about that in your title, and in your subtitle you will say how that gets done or why it gets done, who the book is for, etc. And we've talked about subtitles. All right, so that's why using the problem on your cover really works well. So like I said, you grab them with the title and tell them how in the subtitle. And here's another really good question. As a book designer and a book consultant, I have seen some of the most god-awful, unattractive, downright ugly, and absolutely stupid covers that you could even imagine. I don't want your cover to be that way. I want your cover to be beautiful and to convey exactly what you are trying to convey and to attract your exact reader. So in order to make your cover thumbnail on Amazon look good, you've got to design your cover in a way that is simple and strong and acts like a magnet. And in the cover part of this course, I'm going to show you how to do that. It's so simple and so easy. You know, you don't want to use italics. You don't want to use a whole lot of text. You use very simple and powerful images if you have images. You look at the covers that are in your genre, and at the same time that you're creating something different, you want to kind of fit in so that people will look at your book and understand, oh, that's a book on whatever your category is. You don't want it to be too far out. You also do not want to go with some crazy design trend where the title is hard to read. I see this all the time, you know, where people think, oh, I should make this into a really arty cover. Don't do that. That's not the function of your cover. Your cover absolutely has to be readable at a distance and at a very small size. You know, if you take a business card and cut it in half and then put that up on your screen, that's how big your cover is going to be on Amazon. And so you want that cover to convey exactly what the reader is going to get out of your book right off the bat. You know, you want them to look at that, compare the other things in its category and go, that's the one I want. Okay? And I'll be showing you how to create a cover. Now here's a good question somebody asked. How many sentences should I have in a paragraph? Should I indent it? Should I leave a blank line between paragraphs? This really depends on what kind of book you've got. If you're writing a dissertation, your university or institution of learning might have a specific format you have to follow. If you're writing a workbook, you're going to want to have lots of white space around the content, and you're going to want to leave a blank line between paragraphs. That white space gives your mind room to integrate the information that's in those paragraphs. If you're writing a novel, it's going to be really different from your report or your workbook, because the sentences won't have that blank line in between the paragraphs. If you write paragraphs that are not separated by the blank line, you're going to want to indent the first word. If you do leave that blank line between paragraphs, do not indent the first word, because it's too much space and it's confusing. Whatever you do, do not center justify your text. That's where, you know, it's like a party invitation, you know, where it looks like a little everything's centered around the center. I don't know how to explain it any more than that. The reason you don't want to do that is because when your eye gets to the end of the line and it goes back to the beginning, the next line could be in from the last line, or it could be towards the left. Your eye doesn't know where to go. But if your text is left justified, your eye can depend on that beginning of the sentence or the continuation of a sentence being in line with the last sentence. It makes it a lot easier to read. So if you're sending out an invitation, sure, use center justification. But if you're writing a book, always left justification, unless you're writing in a language that's right justification, obviously. So on the back cover, I think I explained why 5 bullet points, but once again, I've tested this out a lot. 3 bullet points can work. 5 bullet points is the best, because it shows that you know what you're talking about, that you've got some decent content, and it's easy for your eye to skip down. Any more than 5 is too much. 1 or 2 looks like, oh, there's not very much in this book. Okay. Now, I've been asked, what do you mean you won't write too much when I use your system? Why would I ever write too much? I don't know about you, but I have met lots of people who've been writing their books for 15, 20 years. They never get it off their desk. And they've got piles and piles and piles of written material. They've got other piles full of research. You don't need to do that. What you need to do is find out what your reader wants and zero in on the problem they're experiencing or the desire that they have, and gather the material that will help them solve their problem or help them attain their desire. And that's all you need to write. If you know more about the subject, you can write another book. For instance, you know, in EFT, like I said before, I wrote my first book with the basics and the advanced. It was too much. So I made 2 books out of it, the basics and the advanced, because people who were interested in the basics weren't ready for the advanced yet. So I had too much information in there. So in order to have the right amount of material, first you look at your reader and the problem or the desire. You don't look at yourself and say, oh, I know this and I know this and I know this and I want to share this and this and this, because a lot of it's going to be irrelevant and it will overwhelm your reader. You don't want to overwhelm your reader. You want to have them get on the track to getting the success that they want, even if it's entertainment, you know, with a story or something. You want to have the exact material that will benefit your reader. And so I say, when you focus down and you get all that straight, you won't write too much. The funny thing is that with somebody who's been writing for years and years and years, they could probably take all of that material and create 4 or 5, 6 books out of it, because it's so much, it covers so much. So don't do that. You don't need to do that. If you're an expert or if you are somebody who wants to entertain, again, look to your reader, because your reader is going to be your guide as to how much to write. And once again, here we are, we're talking about our readers. How do I find out what my readers really need? This is a really good question. One of the students in this first course is writing a book helping seniors use new technology in order to combat loneliness and feeling disconnected. So what she's going to do is she's going to go to senior centers, she's going to go to community centers, she's going to go to the people that she already works with, and she's going to ask them, you know, what would it be like if you had an iPhone that you could connect to your family with, that you could play games on, that you could read books on? What would that be like for you? And you know darn well that the first thing they're going to answer is, well, I don't know how to use those things. It'd be useless for me. Then she knows that she's going to have to tell them how to use the thing, and then what they can do with it, and then the different rules of etiquette, the different things that they have to learn in order to use that iPhone. And so she can make a short book, you know, maybe 10 small chapters, like we went over before, on how to use the iPhone in order to connect with people, to play games, to have fun. And that way they'll feel less lonely and even less like a failure in life. You know, I'm not a spring chicken, and I'm telling you that the number of people that I know my age who don't know how to use technology, it's really pathetic. And it surprises me because it's my generation that created these things in the first place. So it's like, why don't you know how to use these things? But they're afraid that they might make a mistake, and they're afraid that they might be spied on, or all these strange fears. So if you can help somebody with something, what you want to, if you really don't know what they're experiencing, ask them. Go to forums, go to Facebook groups, go to senior centers, go to community centers, go to schools, universities, whoever it is that you're addressing, find them and ask them, you know, what do you need? This is what I teach. What can I help you with? What do you need to know that possibly I'm not thinking about? So that's how you find out what your readers will. Oh, and you can find publications too. You know, there are lots of online publications, there's magazines, even newspapers, you know, where you see people complaining about stuff. You know, I don't know how to do this, or, you know, my son did that, or, you know, I lost this or that. There's so many places you can find out what your readers really need. Now, here's another really good question. Should I focus on a specific age group for my book on fear of technology? My first thought on that was, no, forget it. You know, technology is technology. But I changed my mind because I'm noticing that a lot of young people are on their phones all the time. And it's not like they're afraid of their phones, but they never use computers. This is a big loss, because if they want to create a book or create an art book or something like that, how are they going to do that on their phones? So they might be afraid of making a mistake. They might be afraid of even buying a computer, what kind of computer to get, you know, all the things that are inherent in that whole bailiwick. So that's really going to be different from the people I was talking about before, who are seniors, who are familiar with, yes, there's iPhones, and yes, there's iPads and other devices and computers, but I don't know how to use any of them. So depending on the group of people that you're addressing, once again, you have to ask them, what are you experiencing? What is the problem? And if I wanted to teach you how to do this, what would you say to that? Would you be afraid of something? Would you be afraid of failure? You know, there's all kinds of questions that you can ask these people depending on what you want to teach them. Okay, more about how to do books on art, on meditations, recipes, energy practices, and coloring books. Okay. Books on art. If you, like I do, love black and white art, you can produce tons and tons and tons of books on Amazon without paying much. However, if your images are in color, as I said before, you need to do your due diligence and find out who's going to be your least expensive, highest quality publishing agent. And by that I mean Amazon or blurb.com, lulu.com, Barnes and Noble, who's the other? Oh, Ingram Spark. Each one has different page sizes and trim sizes. Each one has different color quality. Each one has different paper quality, and each one has a different publishing contract with you. In other words, you don't necessarily have to sign a contract, but for instance, Ingram Spark, you have to pay in order to publish on Ingram Spark. I think it's only $45, but still, if you're prolific and you put out a lot of books, that can add up quickly. And on blurb.com, it costs a bloody fortune to publish a color book there. But if you've got the readers who want your book and it's a really high quality book, no problem, they'll pay for it. You know, if you want to create a coffee table book of your artwork or your photographs. So once again, be careful and really do your research. And let me list that group of people who I've published with anyway. Is blurb.com, lulu.com, that's LULU.com, Ingram Spark, INGRAM -spark.com, Barnes and Noble, I think it's bnc.com, I can't remember, just Google them. And then of course there's Amazon, which you would go to kdp.amazon.com. So be careful and make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row on that one. The same thing with kids' books, because they're going to be in color. They shouldn't cost you too much though, because a kid's book is usually very, very short. Now here's the difference. I've got a book of my black and white drawings that's 100 and some odd pages long. It costs me, for the printing, $2.15, and shipping is on top of that. So my cost is around $3 per book. If that book was in color, it would be $12 or $13 before shipping. So you can see that there's a huge difference between color and black and white. So, you know, do your research, and, you know, you could even do a test book on each website and see what it's like to publish through each one, see what their process is like, see what their prices are like, see what their quality is like. It's really worth doing. If you're in a hurry, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to regret spending your time and money on something that may not work out so well. So take the time to really research all these different opportunities. Now, a book on meditations, I really am curious about this one myself, because as you probably know, when you meditate, you're supposed to have your eyes closed. So how do you close your eyes as you read your meditation book? The only way I can think of, if you're going to write a book for meditation, is to write about the meditation, what it's there for, what it's supposed to do for you, and then have a link in your book to your website where people can download an audio where you take people through the meditation. And this is really a good way for you to get people to your website and have them see the other things that you offer. You know, like if you're a coach or if you're an author who does these things and has more meditations or classes, you know, it's really a good way to get people to your website. But I don't know how you're going to create a book on meditations without some kind of audio attached to it where you can take people through the meditations. A recipe book. Recipe books are fantastic to produce, but once again, if you're going to be doing it in color, watch out. Okay, you're going to want to create it either in 6x9 so that it's handy to have. I wouldn't make more than 100 pages so that when you lay it out flat, it won't flop all over the place. Or 8.5x11 so that people can lay it flat and not worry about it closing on them when they're cooking, and people can write in the margins and make notes, create places where they can create notes. For energy practices, I would create your book as a 6x9 book. If it's a how-to, like how to do EFT or EMDR or some other type of health practice, whatever, 6x9 is a really handy size. It's like your carried around with you size, or your leave at your bedside size. It's really a great size. And then if you want people to follow instructions, create another workbook, just a short workbook that can go along with that. Make it a package on your website. Get this how-to book, and then maybe you add a PDF for the workbook that they can print out. There's all kinds of opportunities to use an ebook on your website for that. And you can also create an audio book, or create audios where you take people through the different types of practices that you teach, and you can have a link to that within your book, whether it's in your print book or the Kindle book or the ebook. All kinds of opportunities here to have different types of modalities. Now, your coloring books, as I said before, you want to have it fairly short, 30 to 50 pages. There are longer ones, but my experience is that people get tired of them and they want to go find another book. I know people who've got literally hundreds of coloring books and they never finish them. They go from one to another, like a bee to a different flower. I think part of the fun is trying to find new ones and seeing, new stuff to do. And some of them have groups where they meet, like once a month and go color together. And each time they bring a new coloring book. So if you've got this really long coloring book, it may grow old on them. I don't know. So create them short, 30 to 50 pages, and only on the right hand side, that's where your image goes. Because if they use pens, the ink is going to go right through that page and it's going to hit the design on the other side of the page if there's one there, and that's going to be a bummer. The other thing to watch out for is on Amazon, you have the choice between cream paper and white paper. Always choose the white paper because it shows up their colors better. Oh, let's see what else. That's about all I can think of for those. And we have gone over, printing prices. I don't know what a price is, but we've we've compared the prices. Here's a really good question. If you've got one color image in the whole book, is it still classified as a color book? If you choose the color option, yes. So you could have one tiny little dot, just say red, in the whole book. That's all there is. You're still going to be paying for a color book. So be careful. Make sure that all your images are black and white. I made the mistake of publishing a black and white book, but I'd forgotten to transform my color image of myself on my author page from color to black and white, and they made me choose color for that if I didn't go back and change it to black and white, because that's what their printer reads. The printing press itself, it reads it as color. And so my book was way more expensive than I thought it should be. And I called them up and I said, hey, what's going on here? I wanted this to be black and white. And they said, well, you've got a color image in it. So be careful and make sure that all of your images are black and white if you want a black and white book. Now, once again, we're talking about audios here to go along with your book. This is really a good thing and people really enjoy it, especially if you've got a podcast. It goes right along with that. Take advantage of this, because not every book has the opportunity to be recorded in your voice. Now, if you wanted to really go far and create your audiobook system, or in a system, you could use Amazon's ACX. Now, this is Amazon's audiobook venue per se, and I really caution you because it's a great thing to do. A lot of well-known authors use it and have people read their books. You know, they hire readers to read their books. You don't need to do that. You know, if this is your first book, don't do that because it's going to cost you a fortune. But if you record a book, you have to absolutely, point by point, adhere to all of their requirements. And one of their requirements is that they have exclusive use of your material for 7 years. If you don't want to lock down your material for that long, don't do it. You can have an audio book without using Amazon's ACX system, for heaven's sakes. You can have it downloadable on your website. Okay, so be careful if you're going to go with ACX. Make sure you read all the fine details. But an audio is a fantastic thing to have to accompany your book. It's one more chance to make a couple more dollars. You know, like, let's say somebody buys your book for $19.95, and in the book they see, go to such and such a page to get a sample of this meditation on blah de blah. So they go to that page, they listen to the sample, and they go, oh, that's really nice, I like that. So then you say, okay, well, here's the meditation for, I don't know, $9, $15, whatever you want to charge for, $5, some low price that makes it available to them. Or you could send them, if they like that, you could send them to another page where they've got a full-on course or a workshop they can take online. You know, the opportunities are endless here of where you can go with this. You know, you go to a workshop or a full-on course or a 6-month coaching program. So, you know, really take advantage of the different technologies. What size should I make my cookbook? We've already talked about that. And why not write my book about EFT? This is for people who are into any particular modality of healing, for energy practices. Unless your modality is brand spanking new and nobody's heard of it before, I would strongly suggest that you do not make a book about the technology itself. For instance, EFT, the Emotional Freedom Techniques, that's been around for, what, 30 years now. When I first learned it in 2001, there were no books on it at all. I looked everywhere for a book on it. All there was the founder's manual of how to use it, Gary Craig. His manual was all there was. And there was his newsletter that came out, gosh, I can't remember whether it's weekly or daily now, but there was a lot of information in there, but it still didn't have that something that I wanted to see in a book. I wanted something that I could hold in my hands and refer to and read case stories, stuff like that. Well, when I started practicing EFT and got fairly good at it and started using it for clients, I was writing Gary for his newsletter, and Dr. Patricia Carrington wrote me and she said, why don't you write a book? Because there aren't any out there. We need a book on it. And I was flabbergasted. Me, I've never written a book like that before. She said, go ahead and try it because you write well. So I said, thank you, I appreciate that. And I wrote my first book on EFT. And it was fairly popular at that time. If I wrote that same book now, it would flop like a pancake because there's already some really, really, really good books on EFT that far surpass my books. I mean, my book's just basic, how to use it and case stories. Other books on EFT tell how to use it for specific subjects, for specific people. They go in depth in techniques for trauma, for headaches, et cetera, et cetera. You know, there's tons and tons of books about EFT and how to use it. So if you are new to EFT and you're all excited and you want to write about EFT, don't. I mean, I hate to be a wet blanket, but unless you've got a specific thing that you're going to help people with, it's just going to flop because people already know about EFT. There are Facebook groups, there are all kinds of forums, there are all kinds of newsletter out there where people talk about and practice EFT together. So what you want to do is zero down and go deep on one particular subject that you're really good at helping people at. That will fly. But if you want to go shallow and write about EFT itself, don't do it, because you won't have much success on it. I guarantee it. And you can try, go ahead and, let me know how that works. But going deep is a much better idea for any type of modality that you're practicing. Now, keywords. You're going to have to use keywords when you publish your book on Amazon. And this is why I had you write all those lists, because all of those lists contain keywords that you're going to use when you publish. So for instance, if I was going to write a book on using the emotional freedom techniques for teenagers who were acting out because they were depressed or angry or whatever, I would have to come up with keywords like rebel, teenage kids, emotions, depression, cutting, acting out, words like that. And then I would enter them into the categories or into the fields on the page for publishing my book. So make sure, I'm going to keep on saying this to you because it's so critical, make those lists. If you haven't made them, go back and make them. It may take writing the book itself in order to complete your list, but have them available. Have a notebook to your side. You may write everything in your device, but having them in a notebook to your side where you can just flip right over to look at them rather than clicking here and there on your device. It's a lot easier to read your little notebook. So have those lists available because you're going to need them. And it's going to make people, when people go on Amazon and they search for certain keywords, if you've got the right words, your book's going to come up and it's going to sell. It's really that simple. Once again, you can use OpenOffice to create your coloring books. You can use Microsoft PowerPoint, but I would use OpenOffice because it doesn't have that extra code. And we've talked about putting the images on one side of the book already. And is there a resources PDF to refer to? Yes, I have created a PDF with so many resources in it. I'm actually considering taking some of them off because they might be distracting. But in this course, on the goodies page, you will find a PDF named resources. Download it and make sure you use it because it is a treasure trove. And I have checked every single link in it. I have used almost all of the websites on it. It's a fantastic reference. It's about 28 pages long. So if you want to print it out, go ahead. But I think it would be better to just keep it as a PDF because all of the links in it are live and you can just click on them. Okay, but it's a fantastic reference. If you didn't take advantage of any other thing in this course, just that reference PDF would be worth it. Okay, so here's a great question. What's an easy way to start marketing my book? We've already talked about making your list, talking to people, finding out what their problems are, getting reviews, stuff like that. When you talk to people about this book that you're going to be writing, you are marketing. When you ask for a review of your book, you are marketing. Marketing is an invitation. That's all it is. If you were at a store and you had a table with your goods on it and somebody came up to your table, you wouldn't say to them, buy my book. you would say to them, are you interested in blah, 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 whatever your subject is? And they would say yes or no. And then if they said yes, you could say, well, this is a good way to da 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 da, whatever it is. You start a conversation. That's all marketing is a conversation. And we've gotten so used to hearing about being sleazy or a used car salesman where they try to push stuff on you. It doesn't have to be that way. It's just a conversation. And so when you ask for a review, let's say you want to ask your mentor for a review, you don't write your mentor and say, buy my book. That's pushy marketing. That's what we think of as pushy marketing. You write your mentor and you say, hey, you know, I am so grateful for the things that you've done for me. And I've been so inspired and so excited by it that I've kind of put my own twist on things. I'd really appreciate it if you would review the material in my book and maybe write a positive review for me. And you know, there's nothing more gratifying than having a student take off and have success because of something that you've taught them. So you can pretty much trust that your mentor is going to say yes. Now, if your mentor is super busy, what you might do is think about something that person taught you and then write a little bit of a review yourself that talks about how you use that particular material successfully in order to help people. And then all they need to do is sign it. You know, people really do that. You know, like people like Jack Canfield and Bob Proctor, they get offers all the time for people reviewing their work. They're not going to sit down and write a review for you, but they will say yes or no to a review that you send them and say, hey, here's a couple chapters from my book. I really appreciate the information I've learned from you, and maybe you'd be willing to put your okay so that I can use your name and website address on this review. It's a really easy way to do it, and it's painless. You know, you don't have to worry about being rejected. They might say no, you know, but chances are your mentor or a peer, somebody who is, you know, also in your area of expertise, they'd be willing probably to say, hey, you know, I'd love to write you a review and talk about how good you are because I really like what you're doing. You know, it's really easy to do that. And what's really interesting is that when you ask for a review and somebody is positive about it and they're excited for you, they'll tell others about it. They say, hey, you know, I just wrote a review for Angela's book. You know, it was a really good book. It gave a different slant to the things I teach. I'm really excited to see where she goes with it. So you're already marketing. And then once you have, let's say you've got 5 or 10 reviews, you want to put 3 on the back of cover of your book, and you want to put the rest of it, you know, really good ones on the inside of your book, so that on the look inside feature on Amazon, people can see that people really like your book, especially, you know, the Times bestseller lists and stuff like that. When people are from those places, it really is great for you to help sell your book, and it's a great start for marketing. The other thing you can do is go to your Facebook page and say, hey, you know, I just sent a request for a review for to Susie Q at such and such a review. Cross your fingers that she says yes. So you're inviting people to know about your book right there before you've even written it, really. You know, you've written a few chapters. And then you could also create a Facebook group around your book. There's so many different things you can do to make it really easy for people to find out about what you're doing. And it's all about you being excited about what you're doing for helping people. It's not about you pushing yourself on them. Once again, getting people's feedback and more casual marketing. We kind of went over that pretty much before. Unless you want to get feedback on your book, in that case, I would send a couple of chapters to somebody who already writes books and they're good at it, and you trust them to give you information without slamming down and rejecting you and making you feel like an idiot. I mean, there's been a couple of people who really took the wind out of my sails when I first started writing. And there was one book that this one woman just trashed right in front of my face, and it made me feel so bad I never finished the book. So you want to be really careful about who you ask for feedback, and specify the kind of feedback that you want. You know, you don't want to just hear, oh, that's great. You want to hear, is the grammar correct on this? Am I using the right kind of colloquialisms? And do my phrases work? Does this particular process look good to you? You know, be specific as to what you want to hear from people, because that way it gives them less chance to trash you. You know, be really careful on this. This is your gem, and you don't want to throw it. You know, you don't want to throw your pearls before swine, because let me tell you, it hurts, and you don't want that. I want you to keep inspired and to finish your book and get it out there in front of people and not get squashed by some, I won't say the word, but some person who just has no regard for your feelings just because they have to be right. Okay, so be careful, but do ask for people's feedback. And you could also ask for feedback from your editor. You know, you've got to make sure that you get your book edited. There's a few different types of editing. There's line editing, there's grammar editing, there's content editing. The worst one that I've seen I read a lot of science fiction, and I really like young books written for the young crowd, the teenagers. They're a lot of fun. But the problem with a lot of those books is the people writing them don't know the first thing about grammar. And it makes the book really hard to read because the commas are in the wrong places, and it makes them look stupid. So you don't want to look stupid. Make sure that your grammar and your spelling are in good shape before you publish. Okay, how do you continue to do casual marketing? You mention your book everywhere you go. So if somebody says to you, hey, George, how you doing? You say, I'm doing great. Boy, I'm in the middle of my book. I'm so excited. And they'll go, what book? I didn't know you're writing a book. Are you really an author? And you go, yeah, it's really awesome. And you start talking like that. If it's somebody who would not appreciate your book, don't talk to them about it, because they'll squash you and they'll make you feel bad, and then you'll have a hard time getting back to writing again. Don't do that to yourself. But if it's somebody that you trust, talk about your book, because then in a couple of weeks when you see them again, they'll say, how's it going? How's your book going? And tell me more about it. Who's it going to help? Who's it going to entertain? And that way you can get them talking about it to people. My friend is writing a book. It's going to be really awesome. She's really good at EFT, and she can help people a lot with it. I know people who are struggling with depression. I can't wait to buy it so I can give them the book. You see how that works? It's all word of mouth. Word of mouth is the most powerful marketing you can get. And it's casual. You don't ever want to be pushing on it, just like you don't want to do. So here are some takeaways that came from the first time I taught this course. Jack was really kind. He said that the chapter info, the information on the back cover, how to do the layouts and the templates, the orders of the book, all of that was great information. Thank you very much. That, a takeaway review like this really makes me feel good, because it's been a lot of work to create this course. And to have somebody go over this in detail and say what it meant for them, that means a lot to me. So if you review somebody's course and so they ask you, what's your best takeaways, make sure that you give them something like this, where they say what they got out of it and they're thanking you. That makes you feel really good. Now, Pam, who is one of my clients who I design books for, because she just likes to write and doesn't want to do the designing, but I sent her the part on the technology for her to review, and she said that even if she did it I made it look easy, which to me meant the world, because she's definitely not a tech person. And then she also realized that she was already writing too much. Now, I had to laugh about this because when I write books for her, I make notes for her all the time. This is irrelevant. This is extraneous. So it was great. It was great to see that she realized that. And she loved how I integrated what the reader needs and how to solve it into the back cover info and make it into chapter headings. That's brilliant. This is something that nobody else teaches, as far as I know. The only other person who taught it was Dan Pointer, and he's long gone now. He was the man that I learned this from. And Wendy, who's writing the book for the seniors, she's just excited to do the book now. And that makes me feel really great because, you know, you can take a course like this and at the end of it feel so overwhelmed and impossible that there's too much stuff and it's too hard. But if she's excited to do the book now, that makes me feel great. And George says I made everything clear. He was nervous, but now he feels like it's doable. That's thrilling to me. And Janice liked the part on color and black and white, and she's going to do crowdfunding for her color art book. That's a really great idea. You know, that there's different types of crowdfunding that you can do. There's Indiegogo, there's Kickstarter, and my favorite is GoFundMe, because the other two, you have to set a limit as to how much you're crowdfunding for. And if you don't reach that limit, you don't get any of the money. But with GoFundMe, let's say you're asking for $5,000 and you're up to 4,999, you still get the money. And what's neat is that they send you the money incrementally as you go along. You know, you don't have to wait until the end. So if you're going to crowdfund for your book, use GoFundMe. And there's one in Australia too that's like it, but I can't remember the name of it. You know, you should Google that if you're in Australia. Let's see here. Yeah, if you wait until you've written the book and then crowdfund it, it's going to be a problem. Start now. And, you know, all the information I've given you about how to talk to people about your book, that's going to really help you to ask for help with the book and creating it. So next up is segment 2, and I will see you there. Thanks for sticking with me.